Hey folks, welcome to Inside Arm Wrestling, the home for all news on arm wrestling, fitness, strength, sports, and competitions. Today we have a lot to talk about in the world of arm wrestling, fitness, and strength. In less than 2 weeks, really the premier event for all of the U.S., the World Series of Arm Wrestling will be bringing its finals to San Diego, California. San Diego, California at the Coronado Beach Harley-Davidson will bring close to 100 plus professional and amateur athletes into the San Diego region to compete to see who the best tournament arm wrestler is in North America, or at least in the U.S. So World Series of Arm Wrestling, folks, if you don't know what that is, it is an event that hosts 4 qualifiers over the course of the summer. They moved all the way from Dallas out to New York, back to Riverside, California, up to Roy, Utah. And anyone that would have competed in any of those 4 qualifiers were automatically qualified to come to the finals, which is actually a free tournament for all of those athletes. And each one of those athletes that are on the pro men's side are competing for some pretty hefty prizes. Certainly the largest payouts in North America for any arm wrestling tournament, World Series of Arm Wrestling, has at first place $2,000, second place $1,250, third place $600, fourth place $250, and fifth place $150. So the World Series of Arm Wrestling is paying out 5 places deep, which hasn't been seen in a very long time. And they are also giving away to each of the first place winners on the pro men's side a pretty expensive Rockwell watch. We've seen the Rockwell watches before. They are no joke. They're expensive timepieces. The winners will receive a custom World Series of Arm Wrestling winners Rockwell watch valued at well over $1,500. So, folks, to win first place on any weight division, looks like the weight classes are 176, 209, 239, and super heavyweight. You're going to walk away with a first place win with $2,000, a brand new watch. If you happen to win the left-handed side, now you're talking another $2,000 plus a brand new watch. So a winner is going to receive at very bare minimum $7,000 in cash and prizes. And then on top of that, World Series of Arm Wrestling is giving away $1,000 to the overall winner on the left and right hand on the men's pro class. So a winner, if you are the top in your division and happen to be the top arm wrestler at that event that day, whoever has the most left in the tank could potentially walk home with $9,000 in cash and prizes. And folks, the great thing about the World Series of Arm Wrestling, from what we've learned, is that they are going to extend next year their regional events to 6, as well as increase the prize money, which certainly puts them on a level nationally and internationally above just about everyone out there on a tournament arm wrestling end. And in talking with the promoter of the event, certainly the super heavyweight class, the big boys, the men that walk on the stage and make the earth rumble, are stacked this year. In talking with the World Series of Arm Wrestling, we are being told that Big Corey West from Arkansas, Paul Cruz from New York, Cody Merritt from Utah, Alexander Yarkovsky from New York, from the Zloty Tour over in Europe, Tony Tomlinson, and multiple other super heavyweights are showing up to pull in that class, folks. These men are large. And when they are on that stage, some of those tables will have in excess of 800 pounds of man muscle strength and push going at it. Super heavyweights are always the talk of a tournament just to see these big men come through. But I think, folks, one name does stand out, and that is Vrez Zadrakian. He is from the LA area, world-class left and arm wrestling athlete, qualified for the 176-pound class. And in the regional for Riverside, won that class in the overall, or won the class and took the overalls on both hands. That in itself is impressive, but to think he did it at the lightest weight class puts him in a possibly a different atmosphere or a different orbit altogether for this tournament. In the 209 class, you're going to have Brent Rockers, who came through last year and won both 209 left and right-handed. In the 239 class, you have quite a few competitors coming from all over the country. Most notable, probably Mega Mike Coburg coming down from the super heavyweights class, getting into the 239 class this year, looking to win the first place awards as well as challenge up into that overall championship and take the overall title. But folks, if you've been following World Series of Arm Wrestling or you're following your arm wrestlers out there, let us know in your comments. Let us know who you think on those super heavyweights are going to be the winner of that division. Is it going to be Corey the Gorilla West? Will the man come in and take both divisions once again this year? Will it be Paul Cruz from New York? Paul Cruz certainly has grown in the sport, has moved up in the rankings over the last couple of years. Certainly over the last year has gotten quite a bit bigger. Cody Merritt, always a world champion, or always a world-class athlete, champion on the world stage. Can Cody Merritt put it all together? Alexander Yankovsky, the big man from Eastern Europe, now out of New York, who has been a Zloty Tour competitor and I believe won a Zloty Tour back in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. Will we see Robbie Burnett, the big man from the Southern Regional, show up this year? Might be a long stretch for Robbie. We are told his sons are playing great football, and obviously Robbie being a really a true parental figure in his kid's life, and certainly a mentor for parents or for fathers to take interest in their kids' lives. He may not be able to make it, although he is qualified. Will big Tony Tomlinson or Alan Hazy Pesic from the Riverside competition come in? Or Victor Munoz out of Brazil. Victor came in and won the right-handed side in Riverside as well. Will Mark Gresham, the big man who's on Instagram, always showing feats of strength, showing his training, will he come into town? Will Brandon Allen come in? Brandon, who gained a qualifying nod by working with the promotion as one of the refs in Riverside, he is scheduled to potentially show up. Will Brandon Allen come with the strength of his previous years of the strongman and with years now of arm wrestling maturity under his belt? Will Brandon come in? And of course, never underestimate Tom Nelson. Tom Nelson from Northern California has scheduled himself to be here. We are hoping he can make it. But folks, out of these athletes, who do you think will be the top three? Do you have Corey West winning it all, or do you have one of those other guys coming up from behind and doing a big upset? And following that, folks, getting into a similar story with the World Series of Arm Wrestling, I have been told that Season 1 is set to launch on Tubi TV here this fall. After talking with World Series of Arm Wrestling as well as the distributors, really what folks came down to is being able to get the content edited into the right format that would be indicative and certainly conducive for a streaming network like Tubi to be able to air. I'm told right now that several corrections have been made. They've been reprocessed, sent back up for one last check, and they are waiting on their ability to set a release date. Now, having said that, in talking with World Series of Arm Wrestling, we are and do know that this season will have 10 episodes. Last season there were 5. This year there will be 10. They will highlight in 2 parts, both left and right hand, in all of the regionals and the finals. So folks, they are ramping up right now with the goal, in talking with World Series of Arm Wrestling, to be able to format this to go onto network, terrestrial TV, and larger streaming platforms, with the goal of 10 to 14 episodes per season. So we look for really big things with World Series of Arm Wrestling. Certainly the event has drawn quite a bit of attention across the U.S., has certainly brought some attention across the other continents, but we do believe that World Series of Arm Wrestling is developing into the premier tournament arm wrestling series right now in the world. But give us your comments on that, folks. Do you think that there are other events that should be given the same notoriety as World Series of Arm Wrestling? We certainly want to cover them. Leave it in the comments. Let us know what your thoughts are. Our third story of the day takes us out to Europe with the East versus West competitions. Now, East versus West was started by an amazing arm wrestler, certainly considered one of the best arm wrestlers of all time, Engin Terzi. Engin started this super match series with the goal of highlighting the most prolific one-on-one arm wrestlers in the world, guys that are known for not only their longevity, not only their popularity, but also their ability to stay on top over multiple years, multiple decades. Engin Terzi is a huge proponent of arm wrestling, and on November 11th, he has put together a rematch that has been waited upon for quite a while. That rematch takes none other than Devin Lorette, the man from Canada, maybe considered by some as the GOAT of arm wrestling, surpassing John Brzenk. However, certainly in conversation within the top 3 greatest arm wrestlers of all time. And that can be measured, folks, not only in success, but longevity, table IQ, ambassadorship to the sport. Very hard to find someone that has more of those check marks in the box than Devin Lorette. He certainly is a gentleman that has been a huge proponent of arm wrestling across the world for many, many years now. But across from Devin, I gave it away, folks, is none other than Denis Saplenkov. Many of you know Denis Saplenkov not as an arm wrestler, if you're not an arm wrestling fan, but more specifically, the strict curl champion. Some may even consider him still the strict curl champion. Others look at Leroy Walker and his strict curl as the new standard of weight. Certainly, there's been conversation between the bars used, the grip used, and why or why not that grip may or may not be easier than the one Denis used. But certainly Denis Saplenkov held the strict curl record for many, many years. You've probably seen him on videos and TikToks of him picking up one of his fingers and smashing it down on a walnut and breaking over a walnut. The man has freakish hands, forearms, just a freakishly developed body. Devin and Denis got together several years ago on the left-handed side. Denis was very, very humble and cordial in the way that he created the victory, but certainly showed that Denis at that time was a good level above Devin on the left hand. But today is a different day, folks. years have gone by. We all know that Dennis had certainly some medical issues. I don't know if those medical issues were ever truly discussed in an open forum. Some speculate that he may have had a stroke. Some speculate maybe some organ failure, or perhaps some sort of viral blood infection that basically took the man down to almost an invalid type of a situation. From my understanding, he was bedridden for months. It took him a very long time to gain and regain, body coordination and strength. But in a true testament of how this gentleman lives his life, he has put together his body. He has put together a package to get back on the table. And on November 11th, he is going to put his arm back on the table with Devin Larratt. And folks, when you say Devin's name, certainly his moniker, There Are No Limits, or No Limits Devin Larratt, the man has developed into a megalodon, a monster of the deep. He is by far the biggest shark in the water. Certainly how he's transformed his body late in life is no short of a miracle in many aspects. To be able to put the time and dedication into your body in order to keep it together and build the mass and strength that he needs to stay on top is really a true testament, again, to this man's resolve to stay as the top dog in arm wrestling. So on November 11th, you will see that as the main event. You will also see some other events with Sasha Andreev versus Artem Tainov, two very, very strong European pullers. You're going to see also, I believe, Engin Terzi competing against, let me see if I can find it, folks. I had it just a second ago. I believe Engin is pulling against David Somushia. Certainly Engin's right hand has gotten a lot stronger after he had his bicep tear. He is back in championship form. You are also going to see two very strong women in Fia Rezic versus Rosa Maria Costa at this event. This event, folks, will have a very, very, very exciting card. One of the great things you'll see about Engin and some of the things that he's doing with his promotion, he's putting a lot of statistical information on Instagram. Certainly a fun page to follow. If you look at some of the information that he puts up, if you look at Denis Saplinkoff here on Instagram, they show his age at 40, his height at 6'2". He is clocking in at 276 pounds. He has a 20.4-inch bicep, but folks, he has a 17.7-inch forearm. Now think about that. His forearm is larger than most men's biceps, certainly bigger than most men's calves, and may even eclipse most middleweight and lighter bodybuilders, men who develop their arms for the sake of developing their arms. This man's forearm at 17.7 inches is incredible. If you look at Devin Larratt's profile at 48 years young, he is 6'5" at 265 with an 18.5-inch bicep, a 16.5-inch forearm. Folks, what you don't see on this statistic is at 6'5", Devin's elbow to fingertip ratio is extremely long. He has a long, Langley arm, but the development in his arm is no short of incredible. You wouldn't think that the man's arm could be developed to the size that it has, but it is one of the biggest and strongest, and certainly one of the most uniquely developed arms in the world of sports in its entirety. So folks, you can log into Core Sports in order to see this. I believe it's a pay-per-view. I'm not quite sure what that cost is, but if you are a fan of arm wrestling, which we are, you will pay for that pay-per-view and see the results as they transpire. Engin puts on a great show. Kudos to him. And certainly we are looking at following his events very closely in the future and Inside Arm Wrestling. So put in the comments, who do you think will win versus Dennis and Devin? Who do you think will win in some of the other matches there for East versus West? Let us know. Finally, folks, our last story of the day. We're going to talk about GOATs. We talked about Devin, but we cannot talk about GOATs in the world of arm wrestling without talking about John Brzenk. John Brzenk, back in September, took on his longtime nemesis in Alexia Voivode. If you look back into the annals of pulling John, I believe it was 19 years ago, John Brzenk faced off against Alexia in a Zloty world event in which Voivode moved John Brzenk, the greatest of all times, arm to the pin pad, cementing the world title that year. Certainly a large upset in many people's eyes. But certainly after that time, John was never able to get his revenge. Those of you who know Alexi and his story, he went on to work with the bobsled team for his country, looked to be in the Olympics, looked to compete on a world stage, has done quite a bit of strength training, has kept his body in order, is a fitness trainer of sorts in his home country. Certainly, he has had a very storied career in the world of sports. And certainly, after 19 years, there was no short of interest in which Alexi and John came together in their King of the Table match. And we saw the greatest of all time in John Brzenk take down Alexi. I believe the final was 4-1 or 5-1. I believe that John allowed Alexi to pull through him in a different position other than a even hands to the center, elbows and wrists straight, and a professional start. However, when you're up 4-0 in a best of 6, which I think their super match was best of 6, John was a sportsman and allowed for Alexi to pull him from some different angles. And I believe in the last match, although we don't have footage right here, that John was able to pull through one last time and take the match in its entirety. Certainly, Alexi was not in the arm wrestling shape that a veteran like John, who has been competing for probably close to 40 years now, was in a consistent strength. But it was great to see these two giants of yesteryear on the table. Happy to see John win that event. But it really, folks, it really brings up the question that we want to ask. Where does John Brzenk go now? And when I say that, folks, we want to know what your thoughts are. John lost to a very tough Todd Hutchins recently, has lost to Dennis Saplinkoff recently, has lost to Devin Lorette recently. So really, outside of maybe his age bracket on the world stage, the super heavyweights, the big boys, Devin and Dennis, John has not been successful in competing against, and maybe Father Time has taken a toll on John. Certainly, John, having a very good career in the airlines, may not be putting as much attention into arm wrestling as he once did. But having someone in his general weight class, and Todd Hutchins beat him recently, begs us to ask the question, do you think that John Brzenk will make a run back at a world championship title in 2024? And if so, what do you think John needs to do in order to get his game, his arm wrestling strength, and his arm wrestling ability into the upper levels of a Dennis Saplinkoff or a Devin Lorette? Let us know in the comments. We certainly are huge fans of John Brzenk. The man himself is a gentleman. If you've ever been to a practice, he'll certainly allow everybody to pull against him. He's kind on the table. He does not do anything that would put you in a compromised position. He believes in your safety as well as his own. And really one of the classiest gentlemen to have ever entered any sport, but certainly one of the classiest gentlemen in arm wrestling. So, folks, give us your comments down below. Where do you think John Brzenk goes in 2024? And, folks, that wraps us up here for Inside Arm Wrestling. If you watch out there in the arm wrestling world this week, certainly keep an eye on the Instagrams. If you see stories that you'd like us to comment or to bring to the forefront of our show, hit us up. Send us over a DM in Instagram or on Facebook. Let us know what you're thinking. We'll follow you on social media platforms. Certainly, if you see something that is newsworthy, let us know. Folks, that does it for Inside Arm Wrestling News Report. This has been Greg Sharp reminding you to train hard, pull smart, and lift safe. Folks, if you like these stories and you want to see more, please hit the like button and subscribe to our page. Also, hit the notification bell underneath the video so that way you're notified every time a new video comes out. And if you're on social media, specifically Instagram, go to the World Series of Arm Wrestling Instagram page. Please follow it. We'll try to follow you back, but it'll keep you up to date with all of the news and events in the world of arm wrestling.